So as mentioned, in case you didn't hear that, I'm James. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm from the media division within Kantar. So what are we going to talk to you today about is, here. Oh, no. It's not working quite correctly, but what we wanted to talk to you today about is niche channels. Unfortunately, these ones aren't running, but if it was, you'd be able to see that rabbit there eating away in terms of his little piece of watermelon, which is ASMR. But actually, just to give you some context in terms of how this came about and what we were thinking of, we were really interested in the area of eSports and Twitch and platforms like that and what they meant in terms of the development of media and how people were consuming things. So we started talking about eSports, but then we very quickly moved on to thinking about, well, that's a great example of something that's really growing and very specialized, but there's probably other examples out there as well now in terms of channels. So not just people putting up clips, but actually kind of channels and specific websites where you can go to and take content. So things like sports. So obviously you can consume Premier League football very easily across a number of channels and very openly. But if you're more interested in gymnastics or in this case beach football or something like that, you may need to go somewhere else and consume that in a different way. And lots of people are actually out there nowadays doing those types of things like that, like travel or using ASMR channels and all of those kind of things as well. So we wanted to understand what was happening and how eSports as a kind of flag bearer for this kind of niche channel was really working. So again, to give you a bit of context there in terms of understanding what it can really mean for us in terms of the huge growth and potential there is in esports, this is taken off Twitch's website, and this is the equivalent of billions of minutes viewed on their platform over the last few years. So you can see that huge amount of growth that we're seeing in terms of people watching esports, and this is just within the Twitch specialized channels. So that doesn't cover YouTube and Facebook and all the other platforms that you'd be able to view this kind of content on. So there's definitely a huge market there in terms of reach and hundreds of millions of people that we're able to reach through esports and these types of things nowadays. But it's not just about reach. We also realize that there's a huge amount of investment going into these categories now in terms of what we're seeing. And again, that's something that we were seeing with this kind of huge growth, that there must be huge potential there. People must be really seeing the value in these kind of things. So to give you some context and to try and understand this a bit better, we thought we'd play a quick game of higher lower. So I'm not going to ask you to pull out your phones and start voting and things like that. But what I'm going to do is hopefully get you all to shout out whether you think it's going to be higher or lower in terms of what the winners of each of these different tournaments actually gets to take home. So how much do they actually get to take? So the Open. Does anyone have a rough idea what the winner of the Open gets? No? I can give you this one as a starting point if you want. So the winner of the Open, the golfing tournament, the Open, gets $1.94 million. So not a bad return for 18 plus holes of golf in terms of going around there. Higher or lower then, do you think the winner of the Tour de France gets more or less than the winner of the Open? Bear in mind that they have to cycle around all of France, a bit of Belgium, I think. Sometimes the UK. I'm never entirely sure how the Tour de France works in terms of where they go. But do you think that person who does that gets lots more money? Lower. Okay. Yeah, only $500,000. It hardly seems worth it, does it? Okay. So now we're coming on to the UK in terms of our big event that we have here. So this is the men's singles final winner. What do you think they get to take home in terms of their prize money? Is it higher or lower than the Tour de France? Higher, okay. So yeah, they get to take home $2.9 million, so a lot of money there. So a huge actual win bonus in terms of what they get for a few weeks of the tennis that they play here at Wimbledon. So next up, we've got Fortnite. So recently, a couple of months back, there was the first ever Fortnite World Championships, various different teams and duels and singles players and things like that there. Played over a day or so. What do you think the winner of that Fortnite actually got in terms of the money that they got to take home? Do you think that's higher or lower? Higher. So it's a bit more mixed, higher or lower. It's a new thing, it's an inaugural thing. Some of you are saying higher. So yeah, it's higher. They actually got to take home $3 million, and that's a teenager who's just sorted out their life. So you can see there's huge amounts of value. So then we come into another one. So most of us have probably heard of Fortnite, and we know it's relatively big, but actually Dota 2 has been going on for a while now. There's a big international event there in terms of playing that. This is a team one, so there's a team of 5 individuals run it. This is running around the same time as Fortnite this year. If we split the prize money between the 5 winners, do you think what one of those winners would have been taking home would be higher or lower than what Fortnite were getting? Lower. Well, actually, I've kind of left the big bit to the end. So actually, they're getting slightly more, and actually, it's over $15 million as a prize fund is what those people are taking home. So there's a huge amount of money in this, and therefore, there must be opportunities for brands. This is going to have to fund itself somehow in terms of what it's doing. So what have we been doing? Well, it won't surprise you to understand we've been doing some desk research. We did find those numbers online in terms of what we're doing. And so we've been trying to understand more about this market and understanding what it means and potentially offers us. We've also done some ad hoc research that we're going to take you through now in terms of a survey, over 1,000 nationally representative individuals here in the GB to give us that market context, as well as boosting up the number of eSports followers within that to get greater validity in what we're looking at. We've done social media listening as well to hear about how people are speaking and talking about these types of things. And then through a new solution that we've got called advanced profiling, we're actually able to take our surveys now that are run on our profiles Kantar panel and fuse TGI data to them, so we can use that media planning data to better understand those groups and those individuals to give us better context in terms of who they are. And that's part of a wider suite of tools that we've got that allows us to do things like programmatic activation and actually kind of fuse our TGI data potentially with client databases as well to understand those things better. So that's what we've been doing. Back to our story. So to give you some context in terms of the different channels that we've been looking at, we mentioned eSports. eSports actually was sitting in the middle. When we asked our survey and we asked people what are you following? And this is, we tried to move people away from the idea of clips in our questioning as much as we could towards the idea of channels and going to channels and doing those types of things. You can see the big one that really came up there was music, but actually things like sports and those other categories that we got there are really big. So there's a huge amount of potential there for eSports in terms of what it can reach in GB, but then also across a lot of these other categories as well. And that could have great impact for us as marketers and also gives great opportunity for some of these other categories and areas to grow in terms of what they offer. We then, going through our data and looking at what we were understanding, found that there were three key themes that we thought were really kind of interesting for us to pull out for you today. Those three themes are, as you can see here, togetherness, interactivity, and openness. So first of all, what do we mean by togetherness? That's the sense of unity, so bringing people together. So one of the things that we maybe think about when we think about digital channels or niche channels and those types of things is the idea that people are kind of doing this type of stuff quite siloed. It's quite individualistic. Someone's posting something up, someone's watching it somewhere else. Maybe it's being shared, but people aren't necessarily doing these types of things as a community. We felt, from what we looked at, that we knew Twitch was probably acting quite differently to this. But actually, when we started to ask people, looking on Facebook, Twitter, even YouTube, how much of what you're doing is around live streams versus on-demand or pre-recorded type content, you can see that actually a huge amount of what people are doing is posting or viewing there is those live streams. So there's event viewing type dynamics, and that's something that we can really start to tap into as marketers in terms of bringing those communities together and doing things as a whole rather than being disparate bits. Attitudinally as well, we start to see evidence of this. So nearly a third of our eSports platform users said that they felt that using these platforms helped them bring them together as a community. So actually starting to feel like they're a community. A quarter of them said that it helped them build connections. So again, it's that idea of it can be dangerous for you to start thinking about these types of things as being kind of antisocial or insular in terms of what they are. They're actually quite social activities. They're actually able to bring people together, and we see that with some of these comments here about why people love platforms like Twitch. They enjoy the live streams, it's great for the streams, really cool streams. So it's that kind of thing of being able to see those things in the moment and tap into that moment. And we see that that's a real opportunity for brands, but then also for these other niche channels to be thinking about as they try and grow in terms of what they're delivering. Luckily for us, it wasn't just us looking at this area. We actually found through our social media listening that Red Bull Gaming, so Red Bull do a lot in this area, had actually posted up their own question to their own followers on Twitter around why people love eSports. We did see evidence of some people talking about the convenience that it gives and the financial side of things, that money side of stuff, but actually a huge amount of what people were talking about in the tweets that were coming off this question that was posted were around the idea of community and bringing people together. So just on this side here on the right, just to give you a few examples, it made a lot of friends from playing video games, the community element, the tears, the screams, the joy, the tension and relief, the rivalry and the brotherhood and the bringing people together. So there's a real sense of bringing people together and doing things. And that kind of unity and bringing people together kind of brings us on to our next theme quite neatly then in terms of interactivity. So that idea of actually sharing and doing stuff. So we asked people within our survey, when you're on these kind of specialized channels, what are the types of activities that you actually get up to? Do you get up to activities, and what are you doing? And you can see there's a real breadth in terms of the different things that people get up to there, whether it's liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, donating to the people creating stuff. There's a real sense of activity and a real active mindset that people expect to be engaged and doing stuff in these kind of environments. And so we need to be thinking about what that means if we're a brand and we're trying to sponsor these types of things and giving people these opportunities, but then also if we're creating and setting these things up, that we're allowing people to have these opportunities in terms of what they're doing. But it's all good and well to see that the people are doing stuff. Does it add any value in terms of what the viewers are getting? Well, they certainly seem to think it does. You know, the vast majority of them, as you can see here, are saying that actually they felt that being able to interact enhanced their value, and nearly half of them as well saying it actually helped them grow their interest in terms of what they were looking at. So there's a real sense of it driving things up and pushing people through. Just to give you another example then, coming from the social media listening side of things. So taking some of the analysis there, this is Booger. I think he's around 19 years old, and he's the young gentleman that just ran Fortnite, so just got his $3 million. And what we can see is that virtually overnight, from winning Fortnite, his number of followers went up by 10 times. So just in that moment, that's instant activity and instant driving towards people following him on Twitter. And there's obviously something huge there in terms of creating an expert, creating a celebrity very quickly, and something that we're able to tap into as marketers potentially in terms of spreading messages or working with these types of individual. But you know, there's following. What does that actually mean to brands? Does that actually mean something that we can use? Is there something important here? Well, actually, we found an example of how powerful this can really be to a brand. So again, coming back to the brand Red Bull, who are quite proactive in this area, we can see here a tweet from one of the top gamers, Axe, who was just tweeting out that he's come now third in the rankings of global players. And luckily for us, he's actually put in there into his tweet, if I come here on the right there, you can see in his tweet, he's included a link to the Red Bull website as part of what he's put there, which makes it really easy for us to track and follow and understand how that's being reshared. If you look at our chart here, we're tracking over recent months from June through to August. We can see mentions of Red Bull being fairly flat, but we can see at the point when this tweet came out, at point A there, we've got a huge spike in terms of mentions of Red Bull via Twitter. And we know because of that specific link that that's being driven by this specific tweet and people sharing and resharing that tweet. So there's a huge amount of activity there that we can really tap into. So next of all, I want to talk to you about openness. And in this case, it's really the willingness to accept brands in this environment. So top there, 77%, the majority of people in these kind of niche environments said that they were open to the idea of brands being there and brand involvement, and that was nearly everyone within the eSports community, so 92% of individuals saying that they were open to it. But why does this openness exist? Well, actually, following on from work we did a few years ago where we were doing kind of qualitative work and speaking to people about gaming, we realized and tested again the idea of legitimacy. So the idea is that actually brands being in these environments helps to add a sense of legitimacy to what's going on. That idea of people being off in their bedrooms, doing things in a kind of siloed, insular type of way. Well, actually big brands, big events, big live viewing, all of these types of things help add legitimacy to what people are doing. So they really like these kind of things. We also saw that nearly 3/4 felt that brands would have an important role to play in the growth of esports. So people are expecting that investment coming in through brands to help grow what they love. And also over half saying that they'd be willing to buy from kind of brands that were sponsoring esports as well. So an openness there. And a lot of them aren't, the majority of them aren't paying to remove ads in any way in terms of what they're doing. So there's this real kind of openness and willingness to accept this, that brands should be there and have a role to play. Although on the right here, as we'll see, that's as long as they have relevancy. You have to be relevant to this market. You can't just shoehorn yourself in there. You have to be appropriate in terms of what you're doing. So what is it? What do those opportunities look like? We can see there's a huge amount of opportunities here, an opportunity to serve these from the kind of more traditional things like adverts and pre-rolls. You can see in the gold here we've got our esports. So huge amounts of opportunities there, but also with the black there in terms of a lot of people saying that they're open to quite a lot within these niche categories, other niche channels as well, in terms of getting involved and doing things. And so in the talk, for those of you who are here for the talk just now, Rosie from eBay was talking about a place, innovation and the importance of innovation in terms of what you're doing. And for me personally, when I heard that, it made me really think about this area around gaming and those types of things, because you've got an open audience who want to interact, who are open to brands being there. If you're going to innovate and do innovative type work, then this is surely the type of environment that you need to be in to be able to do that as a safe kind of place to test things out, where these types of individuals are likely to pick up and be willing to consume these things. So just last chart that I'm going to show you now is going back to the idea of the TGI data that I spoke to you about earlier on. So we're able to take our media planning data from TGI now and through Fusion, link that up with the survey data that we did and look at those different groups that we pulled out. So the eSports, our niche channel users, and then those that aren't using those channels. And we're able to profile them against our TGI data. So in this instance, we've pulled out some of the statements and attitudes around advertising more generally to see what types of attitudes these individuals have. And as you can see, we've got the gold here for eSports, the middle group is the niche users, and our bar on the end is those that aren't using any of those types of platforms. And it's great to see that our e-gamers and then also our niche users are well ahead in terms of being more open to risk or try new brands. They're very open to being kind of less price conscious and trusting in terms of what they're doing. They're expecting to be entertained by advertising. They expect advertising to help them make decisions, and they like to interact with advertising on touchscreens and things like that in terms of what they're doing. So they're much more open to these types of things and much more willing to be involved and take part. So lastly then, just to give some summation of what we've been going through here then, we've talked about mass appeal at the start, so engaging very large audiences and a chance to reach very large audience, whether that's through eSports or some of these other niche channels that we've looked at. And it's not just mass appeal, it's very specific and niche audiences often. So, for example, in the context of eSports, being able to reach young gamers, young males who are traditionally quite hard to reach and engage with them in a way that they want to be engaged with. We also talked about event versus on-demand viewing dynamics, and it's important for us as marketers when we're thinking about being in these environments that we understand we're not just talking about on-demand and individual clips. There are instances in this world where we're talking about big event viewing, and we need to be thinking about how we're tapping into those the elements and those types of things, and when we're offering those different types of services or where we want to be as brands. Community and the ability to kind of support and grow messages is really important. It's a great supportive environment to be in. It's somewhere that's really great, but also it's an area where we can kind of help to spread messages, spread brands. People are talking to each other, and we can see that spread can actually be very active. People are in an action mindset as well. They want to take part, they want to get involved, they want to be doing things. And lastly, that idea of brand receptivity. This is a great opportunity for brands to get involved, but also to try different things and do different things in these types of environments. So that's me. There's a break now, but if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask before we go into that, then please go ahead. Okay, yes?
Which brands do you think are doing this best?
Well, certainly Red Bull is the one that's really standing out at the moment in terms of what they're offering. They're sponsoring teams, they sponsored Dota 2, and you can see that they're obviously working and they're getting their Twitter handles to work and those types of things. So they're doing a great job of making those elements work.
Can I ask the opposite question? Who's completely messed it up?
That's a good question. I think it'd be hard for me to say at the moment exactly which brands that I think are really kind of messing that up. But I know, so we've done work previously looking at how people feel in these environments and what they're doing and anyone who's trying to push themselves in without relevancy is going to be the issue that we see there. So I haven't seen very clear examples of where I can make that obvious to you. I suppose in the wider world of gaming, you can see this quite a bit in terms of mobile gaming, where people are trying to shoehorn their brands in and stuff and don't have that kind of relevancy. But you need to grow that relevancy. And one of the things that we've looked at previously is the different touch points that people have in and around gaming. The idea that you can be in somewhere like YouTube, which is very open, and actually you can probably get in there in a light touch way without the greater level of relevancy. But when you get through to the level of esports, or if you're trying to integrate within games or gaming worlds, that actually you need to have spent the time trying to build your relevancy to get there if you don't naturally have it already. Any further questions? Thank you very much.